This season of Area Code Batavia is brought to you by BEI Real Estate. For over 65 years, BEI has been part of this community, helping local businesses find their place to thrive. They understand what makes Batavia special, offer flexible solutions, and actively give back. Visit their website, beicre.com, and find out how BEI can help you reach your real estate goals. Or call them directly at 630-879-3680. This episode of Area Code Batavia is brought to you by Bulldog Plumbing Incorporated. For more information or to schedule an appointment, visit their website in the show notes or give them a call at 630-313-9109.
There's no equal to it as far as the people who roll up their sleeves and get to work doing something together. It's a community that volunteers, that helps each other, that wants each other to grow. They support local business. We support our sports teams. It is the place that I chose to raise my family because I'm just so in awe of the people from this community. They're amazing.
You're listening to Area Code Batavia, a podcast about what it means to belong in Batavia, Illinois. I'm your host, Richard Clark. Today, I'm talking to Austin Dempsey, the CEO of BEI Commercial Real Estate. As our first title sponsor, BEI have been a huge part of making Area Code Batavia possible. Honestly, though, this is something that BEI has a habit of doing. They've helped to make a lot of things in Batavia possible. Just by pure coincidence, a number of the guests we've had on the show are located in spaces that were sold or rented to them by BEI. Over the course of making this show, I've learned how much spaces matter. I've made a point to interview every guest in their space to get a feel for how spaces can facilitate community, belonging, and connection. And BEI space has its own unique qualities. It's hard to miss the Tower Business Center. That limestone building where BEI is located is a significant part of the Batavia landscape.
The building we're in is the former U.S. wind engine and pump windmill factory, one of the big three.
That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful, yeah. It's one of the big three windmill factories that made Batavia the windmill capital of the world.
Okay.
A century plus ago.
This was a building that helped Batavia find its identity as the city of energy, but it's had other uses too.
After it was the windmill factory, it was probably a number of other uses through the Great Depression. And then from what I understand, 1939, the U.S. government took over this complex. And it became I believe it was called the Fox Valley Ordnance Plant. It was a munitions factory.
I did not know this.
Yeah, it's super cool. I actually we've got an 8mm projectile in the other office I can show you. It's literally a naval cannon shell that gets fired out of like a battleship.
Wow.
There have been mortar rounds and bombs and casings that we have found here. We've always made sure that someone smarter than us came out and made sure that they're inert.
That makes me so unsettled.
I know.
Sitting right here. The reality is spaces and how those spaces are used can define a town. At one point, Batavia was defined as the energy city. At another time, a wartime asset. But once Austin's grandfather bought the building in 1959, it represented a long-term investment in the community and its people. Since then, and especially in recent years, BEI has been intentional about investing in the events, landmarks, and unique opportunities that help create a sense of belonging in Batavia. Even before I approached BEI about sponsoring Area Code Batavia, I started to pick up on the impact they'd made on the community. And that made me curious about the motivations that drive their CEO, Austin Dempsey. Was this part of some elaborate long-term business strategy, or was he just doing it out of the goodness of his heart?
As early as I can remember, I was coming here as a child. Being a family business, it takes everybody in the family to participate in the business. There's not a member of my family in the last 2 generations that hasn't worked here at some point. Worked on a building or swept a floor.
I talked in an earlier episode to Craig Fultos, who grew up cleaning that barbershop basically as a kid. So That seems to be a common thread.
Yep. I actually, just last week, we sold a property at Deer Path and Main Street, the northeast corner of Deer Path and Main Street, where we have a partnership that's going to build a 96-bed skilled nursing facility. It'd be a great thing for Batavia.
Yeah.
It's called Ignite Medical Resorts, and it's for anybody who needs skilled nursing or rehabilitation of any age.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm super excited about the project.
Yeah.
But it had real significant meaning to me because in 1993, when we purchased that property and then subsequently developed off some other pieces of it, it was a horse farm. And my very first job at 13 or 14 years old is cleaning out the horse stalls.
Right.
And then when I was done with that, which was a brutal job in the heat of the summer,
Yeah.
I got to hand scrape the barns and repaint the barns. That was my first job.
Your first job was at this location.
It was out there at that location. Yeah.
How often are you sort of selling or renting out places that you have deep connections to in that way?
Pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's bittersweet for you?
This one was bittersweet.
Okay.
Because it was the very first project, first task that I did, the very first job that I had.
Yeah.
I am really excited with the user that we're bringing in, but when we sold the property last week, I actually stood out there after the closing was done and just took it in one last time. We're going to be demolishing the buildings in the next couple of weeks.
Wow.
And, it's the end of an era, but it's the end of an era that it's time for the end of an era.
Yeah.
Small farmette site just doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
In this community, the community's grown tremendously in 30 or plus years.
Yes.
But what we're bringing to town is going to be something that I think will be a true benefit for everybody in the community.
I want to get to that, how the community has changed over the last several years. But before we do that, I also want to ask you a version of that question I always ask at the beginning of the show, but about Batavia writ large. So what is special about the place of Batavia and this location?
What's the most special about Batavia, in my opinion, is not necessarily the location, although I can speak to that. The most special thing about Batavia is its people. This is a community that is really, there's no equal to it as far as the people who roll up their sleeves and get to work doing something together. It's a community that volunteers, that helps each other, that wants each other to grow. They support local business.
Yeah.
We support our sports teams. It is the place that I chose to raise my family because I'm just so in awe of the people from this community. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Location-wise, you got the Fox River, which is really cool. There are other communities up and down the Fox River.
Yeah.
You've got some great history with the local buildings. We've got great amenities in this community. You've got Fermilab on the east side. You got Kane County Forest Preserves on the far west side. We're bordered north and south. But what's truly amazing is it's just the people who live here. It's what makes Batavia so unique and so special.
Yeah. So I've thought about this a lot. Obviously, I've done a lot of these episodes, and that is a theme that pops up a lot. One of the conclusions I've come to is that there is something special about the people here, but that it's interesting to me the way people and spaces and structures can sort of help one another or feed into one another. And I'm curious why you think it is. Why does it keep happening? Why does this place keep being special in terms of the people that live here?
I think the reality of it is it's multi-generational. I'm the first of my family and ever to live in Batavia.
Yeah.
I grew up in Elburn. My grandfather was from Wayne, so surrounding communities. I've got brothers and sisters that live in surrounding communities.
Yeah.
I chose Batavia because of the connection that I had to people. And I think, like anything, it's to each their own. But if I look at some of the kids that my sons and daughters are friends with, many of them are multi-generational Batavians.
Interesting.
They no one loves living in their hometown when they're young and growing up, right? Everybody wants to go somewhere else. But the amazing thing about this community is people come back.
Yeah.
And they come back in droves, especially when it's time to raise children. And I'd love to tell you that this is the exact formula for what makes the people so great here. But I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But what I do see is I see a really ferocious loyalty to support local. but both in community events, in school and sporting teams, in shopping and small businesses. I see a great pride in the community, pride in ownership by business owners, pride in ownership by homeowners, people who come through and are just impressed with what the town looks like. Could it look better? Sure. Could we get a lot more development? Absolutely. Could it change? It certainly could. But I think the people here are proud of who we are. And I think we're proud that we're not another suburban community. We think we're a little different.
Yeah.
And we're different in a way that is hard to tangibly qualify.
I don't know how unique this is to Batavia, but it does feel like there's an interesting collection of sort of transplants from other places. That's me. People who have grown up here forever. That's Craig Faltos, who keeps coming up for some reason. And then there's like people like you who live just outside and then moved here. And then people who, or like a number of people I've interviewed, who have moved out because they hated this place at first. And then they came back inevitably. There's something about that mix. There's like an outsider perspective from some of them. There's some of them who know what this town is, and then they go outside and they experience other things. They bring it back, which is interesting. But there's a mutual respect, it feels like, between all of those groups.
This is just thinking out loud, but it kind of feels like a little slice of the American dream, right?
Yeah.
We take people from all over and brings them together in a melting pot of a community with different backgrounds and upbringings, and what we put out is something that takes work and effort, but the people are willing to put it in to make it the community a great place.
When was the first time you remember feeling like you belonged in Batavia?
Wow. I remember the 4th of July. As a kid.
Yeah.
We would drive in from Melbourne during the 4th of July. The Batavia for 70 plus years has put on the annual 4th of July fireworks sky concert, which is truly a spectacular event. And there's a very, very small group of Batavians who work tirelessly every year to keep that going.
Yep.
And I remember the very first time that I thought, wow, it'd be cool to live here someday. I was probably, about the age of my oldest son, somewhere in that 10 to 13 range. And we were at the 4th of July festival. And it's not just fireworks choreographed to music, which is spectacular, but it's a whole day event. And there's food trucks or food vendors and people out playing Frisbee, and you pick up games of football. And I just remember walking through the crowd with my older brothers and, met up with a group of guys over there at Engstrom Park. We started playing Frisbee and forget what else we were playing. But I remember thinking, what a cool community. This would be a place that someday I'd like to live.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that fireworks show is important to me.
Yeah.
Because of that experience. And I got involved in the fireworks, because Roger Breisch, who ran it for a number of years, asked me to get involved.
Yeah.
And for 17 years, I've been part of that very small group of Batavians who tirelessly put this thing on for our community. It's all volunteer driven. It's a volunteer committee that raises, $40,000, $45,000 every year to put on this festival. People have asked me before, why do you do it? And I like to say that hopefully there's another kid like me that comes and has a similar experience and says, hey, I want to live here. Yeah. And I want my kids to have that same experience that I had.
That's cool. I've had a similar experience. The fireworks is one of the things. It's an anchor, right? It's like every year you look forward to it. You go, you get to be in the middle of all of these people. Some are from out of town, a lot of from out of town, I suspect.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then you see people and stuff. I happen to go to church, that church parking lot that belongs to. So I get special privileges as a result of that.
Good parking treatment.
Exactly. Yeah. And we walk there, or bike there. I don't know. It depends. So we get to go drive all the way across town to do it. It's just like a whole experience. It's fun.
That's awesome.
I want to talk about this. How did you become the CEO of BEI?
Well, it's interesting being in that we're a family business.
Yeah.
Everybody started at the same spot, all janitorial, cleaning, construction stuff. I never minded work. I like to work. I had siblings who had all had the same start that I had. I kept coming back summer after summer. I don't know if it's a combination of the fact that I liked having a job or, I liked making less than minimum wage, which is what I was paid back then. But
that's appealing.
That was real appealing.
Yeah.
I didn't know till years later that I was getting paid less than minimum wage, but that was a good lesson in negotiation that I learned early on.
Right.
I think what really brought me here was I've got 2 older brothers and a younger sister. I've got 3 cousins.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard business. And it's a business that takes a significant amount of work. And the reality of the situation is it's not easy, and every day is a grind.
What was the moment you kind of knew, oh, this is happening, I'm going to do this?
So I was part of another company that was very successful in the early 2000s, right after 9/11. A company that I was an early employee on had a chance to go public and had a very successful run. And in 2006, that company sold.
Okay.
And I had just gotten married. My wife and I did some traveling, and I came back and was trying to chart out, what did I want to do in life? And at that point in time, most of my family had either worked in the business and left,
okay,
or was still working in the business, and wasn't happy. I remember my wife of 19 years. Today is our anniversary, by the way.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. She said to me, if we're going to settle down, now might be the time to do that. And I said, well, I thought we did settle down. We bought a house.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I think if we ever want to have a family, now might be the time. We're a little later having kids than a lot of our friends. So I came in and I sat down with my mom and dad and said, hey, is there an option to potentially move forward here, being part of the family business? I remember my dad said, thank God you asked.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he was worried about the through line there.
Yeah. So he was, my sister, my younger sister was the last one still in the business. Everybody else had exited.
Wow. Yeah.
And had no interest at all.
So why did you want to do it if it's so hard?
Back to that early work ethic, from cleaning out the horse stalls and hand scraping and repainting a barn. That subsequently, we burned down a few years later, which was also interesting. I've never minded the hard work and the entrenchment in the community. I had some siblings and some family who didn't like being so entrenched in the community.
I see. Yeah. The first time we met was because some guy introduced me to you in the coffee shop out of nowhere.
That's 100% right.
Yeah.
Yep. And
so it's that kind of thing all the time, I assume.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I joke around. There's not a week that goes by that somebody doesn't ask for something.
And do you like that?
I've come to compartmentalize that into being part of this community and being part of a community that's interwoven. BEI is interwoven into Batavia. I mean, for 65 years, we've been helping to shape not just Batavia, the entire Kane County. If you look at the developments that our company's been part of, we've brought thousands of housing units, millions of square feet of commercial space, a hospital. I mean, there's just been a lot that this company has been involved in. And over the years, it ebbs and flows. But generally speaking, we do a lot of good for the community. But a lot of people expect things out of you then.
This episode of Area Code Batavia is brought to you by Bulldog Plumbing Incorporated. If you live in the Fox Valley, especially Batavia, you know the problems that hard water can cause. Scaly dishes, dull hair. We've had a bunch of issues with our appliances, and it became a problem. We had to address it. That's where Bulldog Plumbing comes in. They're a family-owned business who understands specifically our local water issues. We actually used them to check out some of the issues we were having in our home. They came in, they looked around, and they gave us sort of an honest appraisal of what we could do, what we experienced. And we experienced no pressure from them to do something we didn't want to do. So we had a really good experience with them. And Douglas and Jamie Sam pride themselves on supporting the local community through their local business. That's the whole reason they're supporting Area Code Batavia. So if you're experiencing issues with hard water and you want to address that, call Bulldog Plumbing today for your free water analysis and personalized solution. Call them at 630-313-9109.
So you became CEO in 2007, is that right?
In 2007, I joined the company.
You joined the company. Okay.
I was vice president.
Okay. What year was it when you became the man in charge?
I became the man in charge early March 2020.
2020. So you started
Days
working
later.
Right? You started working. I'm going to make an observation.
Yeah.
You bring bad luck apparently because you started working in right before 2008, which was a total disaster in terms of real estate, especially.
Yeah.
And then 2020 was COVID,
Yes.
which must have been hard.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
I'm proud of things as an organization that have come out of both of those. The Great Recession was just crippling, and it was crippling for a long time on so many of our businesses. I actually started the Fox Valley Entrepreneurship Center in 2009. I was listening to the State of the Union. President Obama gave a speech at the State of the Union, and he was talking about working with the SBA, the Small Business Administration, to help local businesses. And I remember calling to my wife in the kitchen. I'm like, "Hey, honey, have you ever applied for a grant?" And she's like, "No, why?" And I'm like, "Because I'm listening to the president. I think I'm going to apply for one of these." And she's like, "Yeah, good luck."
Yeah.
Well, we got the grant.
Nice.
And we created an entrepreneurship center really to help local small businesses survive the Great Recession. And that became an accelerator, and it's still going today. It's helped out 200 plus local companies. I
feel like I've met a few people who've gone through that.
Yeah, and the Batavia Chamber here is a big sponsor of it. And there's chamber members every year who go through that. And I've stepped down a year ago of running that organization because there's a new generation of hardworking entrepreneurs that have taken the charge with that. That was something that I was really proud of coming out of that. And COVID, COVID was terrible. And think about it, in the real estate business, and we lease and sell space. And for a period of time, no one wanted to be in the same space. We're still dealing with, do you work from home? Do you work at the office? Do you have a hybrid? Nobody has that figured out yet or dialed in. I think it's a fluid process, but you can imagine a number of our customers got in some real significant trouble during that period. And I'm really proud. We ended up, I think we had 57 workouts that we did. So 57 small businesses and 12 kind of western suburbs communities we worked with to come up with some sort of plan to help them survive that. I used the Entrepreneurship Center significantly during then to help revise and retool business plans.
Wow.
I remember we actually helped some of our customers fill out their PPP loan applications just in draft form. We said, you have to submit this, but this is how you fill it out. We put a hardship package together, and out of the 57, we have about 450 customers in total. Out of the 57, we only lost 16.
Wow.
I think is a pretty good number.
Yeah. And it feels like it was a time of mobilization in general. Like everybody's mobilizing to make sure, just keep it together.
Yeah, we keep it together and help each other out.
Yeah, that's cool. When you started in this role, how did you expect Batavia and its culture and its landscape to pan out over the next few years?
So when in 2007, when I arrived, I was excited for Batavia's future, and I still remain excited today for it. We've seen a much slower pathway to progress here, and global recession, global pandemic. There's some reasons behind it, but I expected Batavia to have a lot more growth than we have had. Growth in not only population, but growth in businesses and reasons for other people to want to come in and find out why this community is such a great place. And we've had a number of them that have occurred in that period of time, and it's exciting. We've got a lot of positive things that have happened. I probably would have, 17 years ago now? 17 years ago, I probably would have said we'd be a little bit further along than we are today.
What would that look like?
I think it would look like a really vibrant downtown with significantly more housing and restaurants and engagement of the river. I think our industrial community has done a great job on the far east side. I think our Randall Road corridor has had its ups and downs. Whether you're east side or west side or whatever ward you live in, downtown is the heart of the community. And that's one of the things that makes Batavia great. I've told Joy and Leah over at Limestone, I said, you guys are part of the heartbeat here in this community. And I think, generally speaking, anybody that you talk to wants to see downtown pop a little bit more than it has.
Do you think there are upsides to that reality?
Yeah, there's an argument that a lot of people I've had over drinks with other Batavians a lot of times.
I've had this, not argument, but just balancing the tensions,
discussion.
Right?
Yeah. And it boils down to what makes this community such a great place is its people, right? And when you add tremendously more people in, does that change it? Do we lose some of the quaintness? Do we lose some of that camaraderie? I have patiently listened and patiently participated in both sides of that argument. And the only thing I would say is it's happening all around us.
Yeah.
Batavia, if you look at the surrounding communities, 17 years ago, just in my sample size, there's a lot that's changed in the surrounding communities.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I don't want to lose the opportunity for that to happen here either.
Yeah. Is there a reason, and I don't know, maybe you can't answer this, but what do you think is the reason for that?
Several moments.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's
the 2008 and 2020, basically.
Yeah. 2020 was
worse than 2008 for you.
It was worse because, my role had changed in the organization. And
I see. You were ultimately responsible.
Yeah. I also had that kind of an overwhelming sense of, it's up to me now, and it's up to this great team here at BEI to help our customers try to not only survive, but get back to thriving.
Yeah.
Which was good. So like most in COVID, sitting at home with my kids trying to do e-learning. In the first week of COVID, I, polished off an entire thing of Oreos. And then I was like, well, this is a bad use of my time.
You're a stress eater then.
Yeah, stress eating. So I was having all these calls with the tenants, with all of our customers. And so I just started going for walks.
Yeah.
And I found myself doing 6-mile walks, just constantly on the phone, talking to different team members here at BEI, talking to our customers, talking to city officials in a multitude of different cities. And I just got to the point where being outside, no matter really what the weather was, unless it was like a terrible storm, even in the snow, I just put the boots on and I go for hikes and walks. And being out in the community, even though there's no one else out, was just so impressive. I remember being here, being present in the community really helped give me a sense of purpose and a sense that it was going to be okay.
Yeah. I remember hearing someone say at some point that one of the reasons being out in nature is so good for you is because it reminds you that you're part of something bigger than just you. And I think that's like profoundly true when it comes to being out in the community, in a town where other people are. There's one thing about being out in nature that's like maybe in some arguments, a more profound version of that. But it's a different, interesting approach to that with community too, like being out, seeing other people, especially after the picture you paint of eating a whole bag of Oreos. And then that's a very insular moment.
Yes.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
And for me, it's jalapeno cheese dip. That's if I'm eating a whole thing of jalapeno cheese, check on me if I'm eating that. But you go out and you experience other people, or even the specter of other people, the reality of other people. It changes things, it feels like.
I worked with the city. We got Water Street closed down, similar to what they done on River Street when people were starting to come out of their houses and their basements a little bit. And
I remember that.
We did some programming out on Water Street, and it was not easy to get the street closed down. And we ended up getting tables donated and umbrellas donated and flower pots donated. And we just started building this coalition of people who are like, let's try to get people back together. You just outside, but just give them more space, community space to be present, be 6 feet apart still, but
right.
But do it in a way that we could get together. There was some programming that was done there, and I saw sports teams getting together out there. I saw families having family, get-togethers because they haven't seen each other in a year and sitting at different tables. And I was just so engaged I was so energized by the amount of people that would come out and just use that space.
Yeah.
Like you said, people want to be together here. I've said it a lot, and I truly believe it. I've never realized how much it takes to raise children until I had them. And there's an old famous saying that says it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I believe it takes a village to raise a community, right? We're all in it together. We all have to work together. A healthy tide truly raises all boats.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
What's good for any business in town is good for every business.
Right.
What's good for East Side, West Side is good for everybody in this community. And the more we can get the community together, the more we can get them to share experiences together, I think the stronger this community gets.
Talking about what's special about Batavia, this is the only community I've lived in where people actually believe that.
Really?
You know what I mean? People say it all over the place. I've talked to so many like companies and organizations that say they don't believe in competition and blah, blah, blah. Here, it is proactively lived out in a way that I've never seen. Now, maybe I'm just not well-traveled enough. I don't know. It's possible. But I've lived in a few places and I just haven't seen it in the same way as proactively as I have here, which is interesting.
Oh, that makes me feel great. That doubles down on what we were talking about earlier with the fact that this community is truly kind of a special place.
It is, yeah. I probably should ask this at the beginning. If someone asks, what do you do? How would you describe what you do?
What do we do here at BEI?
What do you do specifically?
What do I do? Oh.
And in context of
sure.
BEI, yeah.
You know, my role is really fundamentally simple. I set the course and vision and direction for the company.
Yeah.
I create the culture and maintain the culture that helps the people that I hire be successful.
Yeah.
So my role is hire the right people, put them in the right seats, give them the tools and the resources they need to go forward and be successful, and help build this BEI family and BEI community across all the platforms that we work on.
And BEI's mission is to do what?
So our mission is build community.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is
interesting.
Ironic because it's kind of the theme of the podcast here.
Right.
But so BEI's mission is we build community. We build a community not just with our BEI family, our team members. Yeah. And we truly approach this as a family business. You could ask anybody that's on the BEI team or works in any of the BEI verticals. Yeah. And they'll tell you we're very family focused. We do events with family and that type of stuff. But it's building our community of customers.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we love to do is we dot connect. So a lot of times we've got customers who may actually be able to sell to another customer who've never met that other customer. So we do tremendous amount of inner networking and dot connecting within our kind of family of customers. Yeah. And it's been great because we've seen just tremendous lifelong friendships built because it turns out someone else in the same building, a floor down and 5 doors over, is somebody who's going through something very similar, right? Or selling into a same industry and can make introductions. We're trying to build community inside the community that we operate. That's our mission.
Correct me if I'm wrong though. The primary way you make money is real estate, right?
The primary money maker is real estate.
So some people are asking, how does that build community?
Oh, sure.
Is there an answer to that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So Limestone's a great example.
Yeah.
So Joy, and Leah, who are doing a phenomenal job over there, it was Mo and Dennis. And Mo and Dennis had a coffee shop on the east part of town where Thorabella's is today. That real estate wasn't working out for them. And they weren't able to continue there. So we took a chance because I believed in the mission of a downtown coffee shop. Yeah. Just fundamentally, we believe in that. Right. When we talk about building community, having downtown coffee shops helps build community.
Right. Right.
So we took a huge shot and we took an architect's office and converted it to a coffee shop. And the rest is history. There's so many downtown businesses that we've got here in Batavia, but all over that really help create a sense of community. I mean, Hearth and Hammer next door. I know you did an interview with those guys. Yep. They were up on 31, nice location, hard to find. Yep. They wanted to get a little bit bigger, but they really wanted to have a place that could be a home field advantage. Yeah. But certainly help them to have people experience what Hearth and Hammer needs to be and wants to be.
Right.
And now they've got it.
It's crazy how that space casts a vision for who they are.
They have done such a spectacular job. In fact, most of the people that you have interviewed, Bocaditos, Fernando's, Limestone, Hearth and Hammer,
they're using their space to create community, really.
Absolutely.
And I think this is what some people may have a hard time understanding, or I don't know, how do I put this? Some people may not realize how integral spaces are to community. All this talk about third space, right? Third spaces and that kind of concepts like that actually matters quite a bit. And so there's something to, it sounds like what you do is prioritize spaces that help community and sort of nudge them along in that way.
Yeah, and we take great pride in the fact that we probably disproportionately help small mom and pop businesses that are trying to take their space and create it into a space for community.
Yeah.
I mean, we work with Starbucks and Walgreens and big companies all over, Fortune 500 companies as well. You don't get to do that as much there. But we do get to, we do take great pride in the fact that, whether it's in downtown St. Charles or Batavia or Geneva or wherever, that, when we get an opportunity to work with a business owner that's got a real vision for something that they can create in the community that enhances the community, we really try to support and pull behind them.
Yeah, that's good. What keeps you up at night?
I'd say generally what keeps me up is just making sure that we're always delivering on, with a commitment to our community and the commitment to excellence that we've said we will, and just making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. You mentioned observing the fireworks and then deciding to help make the fireworks happen. And I think that's like an interesting example of what feels like a theme, which is, and you see it in the way you handle limestone and other things, which is like when you live here, it starts to create a sense of investment. Right. I'm actually interested in things that you have done that haven't made exact business sense.
Yeah.
But that reflect that investment, that personal, frankly, bias and investment that you want Batavia to work out.
Oh, there's probably a lot. As I said earlier, we really disproportionately support small business. And a lot of times we put a lot of resources behind people who want to take a flyer. Energy City Brewing is a great example. If you haven't met the Files, you should go and do a podcast on those guys.
Yeah.
They started in the basement underneath limestone, and legitimately, David Files was a chemical engineer or master engineer or whatever for a ethanol plant, and he got into making beer. Because he liked it. It was something different.
Yeah.
And I don't even drink beer at all.
Yeah.
But I met those two, and they were just phenomenal humans right here in Batavia, great Batavia story. And we took a chance on them. And here they are now. They're on a facility on First Street, and they produce constantly some of the best beer anywhere in the Midwest, which is great. Water Street Studios is a great example. I mean, Water Street got its start because I had a building that I had to get the backside painted rather than painting it, just repainting it, slopping white on it.
Right.
I talked to Joe Gagnapan, who's a local area artist, and for the same amount of money that I would have paid to have just painted it all white, he painted a mural on it.
Beautiful.
And it was just spectacular. And one day he's out there painting the mural, and it's a hot summer day, and I went over and I invited him to lunch at Daddy-O's, and we went over to Daddy-O's, and Scott was there, gave us our menus. We sat down, and I just started chatting with him about what are some of your dreams, your hopes, your passions, your vision. And he told me about this idea that he had for a community arts center. And I said, well, why haven't you done it? He goes, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to put a business plan together.
Right.
I said, well, I know how to do that stuff, but I don't know the artists.
Yeah.
If I put a business plan together, can you bring the artists? He
I love
said,
that.
Sure.
That's huge. Yeah.
That happened right here in Batavia, right over at Daddy-O's Diner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
now they're your neighbors.
And now they're neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think it means to belong in Batavia?
For the Batavians who get it.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to introduce themselves to somebody new.
Uh-oh.
They're,
I'm an introvert, so I'm like,
okay.
oh man, that's hard for me. That's the whole reason I started this podcast is I don't have to, it gives me a reason to introduce myself.
But
forces me.
Just like you and I met, sometimes you just have to meet somebody that Doc connects you with somebody else. Right. So you're out in the community.
Yeah.
And so being out in the community is key. So being able to talk to your neighbor.
Yeah.
Come spend time downtown at events, go to the fireworks. When someone asks for help, be there. If you've got a great idea and you're trying to do something that's really cool and you get stumped, ask for help. Oftentimes, the difference between something happening and not happening is just being okay to ask someone for help.
Yeah.
And this is a community that gets it and is willing to do it. I mean, the Riverwalk was built by volunteers. I've got blood in the sand under those bricks from where I cut my hands one day, laying bricks in the Riverwalk when I was a young kid. And, just such a rich history of people in this community that are willing to get out there and do something. I just encourage people, be one of them.
Austin's not the first person I've heard talk about Batavia as a town built by volunteers. It's a running theme in most of our episodes, and it comes up again and again in everyday conversation. But I'm going to admit something a little vulnerable here. All this talk about volunteerism can sometimes stress me out a little bit. I've got young kids, limited time. I'm not exactly sitting on a pool of resources. I'm also thinking often about those who have to work all the time just to survive, paycheck to paycheck, those who need to rest on their time off. If volunteerism is the pathway to belonging, then what about those seasons when we just can't spare the time? Honestly, I think Austin put it best. In Batavia, there are two pathways to belonging: offering to help and asking for help. There's dignity in both. Whatever it is you need to feel a part of Batavia, don't be afraid to ask. Odds are there's someone out there willing to offer it. Thanks for listening to Area Code Batavia. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. If you enjoyed this podcast, you should absolutely subscribe to the newsletter. Not only will we let you know when a new episode is out, but you'll also receive a weekly list of 5 concrete ways to belong in Batavia. Just click the link in the show notes. Most importantly, if you know someone who would love to hear this podcast, please share it with them. Word of mouth is the best way to grow our community and help more people feel like they belong in Batavia, Illinois. Area Code Batavia is produced by Area Code Audio. It's hosted and produced by me, Richard Clark, with additional production help from Jennifer Clark. Edited and mixed by Matt Linder.